Hola, bienvenidos a un episodio más de Después de la pérdida. ¿Cómo estás, Eduardo Madrigal?
Muy bien, contento otra vez en este escenario, ya se la saben, un episodio muy bueno, pero va a ser en inglés otra
Ay,
vez.
sí, ve entrenando, porque luego nos trabamos, pero a mí me gana la emoción y tenemos una invitadaza. Una invitadaza es un tema que me habían pedido mucho para hablar acerca de ser dula de muerte. Cuando he dicho que soy eso, la gente es, ¿qué? ¿Qué es eso? Bueno, pues hoy vamos a hablar con mi maestra, con la persona con la que yo me certifiqué para esto, Suzanne O'Brien. Es una excelente persona y vamos a platicar de un montón de temas de su libro que ya pronto saldrá en español también. Y bueno, pues muchos planes juntas, pero sobre todo vamos a aprender de vida, ¿o no?
Sí, de vida, de sus experiencias, de lo que sirve, de qué tal vez cosas no, etcétera. Está muy bueno el episodio, nos gustó mucho. Como saben, estará todo en subtítulos, si no le mueven al inglés, entonces no se preocupen. Y pues nada, ojalá lo disfruten. Vámonos a la intro.
¡Vamos! Bienvenidos a Después de la pérdida.
Un podcast creado para ustedes.
Las personas que han tenido una pérdida
¿Quieren aprender del dolor?
o conocer más sobre la vida.
Un espacio para crecer en resiliencia.
Y también en amor. Yo soy Gaby Pérez Islas.
Yo, Eduardo Madrigal.
Comenzamos. Hi everyone. I'm very glad to have you here in another episode of Después de la pérdida. How are you, Eduardo Madrigal?
Very good. Very excited about our new guest today. So thank you for being here. Suzanne, how are you?
Oh, I am great. And thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to being with both of you for a very long time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. I want to read her resume because I don't want to miss a thing. I even put on my happy blouse today because my heart is really happy and I want every word of my coming out of my mouth making honor to this happiness. Suzanne O'Brien is an holistic wellness nurse, international speaker, and best-selling author of The Good Death, a guide for supporting your loved one through the end of life. She is considered a pioneer in the global Death Doula movement and is the proud founder of the International Doulagivers Institute based in the United States. She created the award-winning Doulagiver End-of-Life training in 2008 and has traveled the world speaking, educating, and helping build training programs to help support communities globally. In 2015, Suzanne was awarded Worldwide Leader in Healthcare by the International Nurses Association for creating Doulagivers International. Named Oprah Magazine Humanitarian Brand Ambassador in 2019. Oh my God. And she is my teacher. Let me show you my diploma from Doulagivers.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that training, which was great. And I know that many of my own students, they want to follow your steps. They want to be death doulas. So this conversation is going to be very important for them and for everyone. Do you want to start, Eduardo?
Yes, Suzanne, before we start, I would like to get to know you, and our audience would like to get to know you a little bit better. So if you could tell us maybe a little bit how you started in this end-of-life care situation and what inspired you to do this kind of work?
That's such a great question. So I'm a registered nurse by trade. And so I was working in the mainstream hospital and I kept noticing elderly people. And I also was noticing people would have some end of lives in the hospital room, sometimes with nobody there. And I also felt very disconnected to the work because as a nurse in the hospital, I was just giving out medication and doing paperwork. I wasn't with the patients. And I thought, wow, I got into nursing to be with patients and families and support them. And that was the farthest thing almost from what was happening. And so I felt very disconnected of becoming a nurse. And I thought, what am I going to do? I'm very unhappy. And I heard a little voice that said, go to hospice, work with end-of-life patients inside. It's like your higher self of your heart. And I didn't know why, because I had no end-of-life experience, but I felt a connection when I heard that and I followed it. And I knew the first day I was in hospice care as a nurse that I was in this place. I was like finding my purpose. And in that space of end of life in the United States, it's not going well. A lot of places in the world as well. We have a huge aging population. Death is the number one fear in the world. We've removed the planning, the talking, the wisdom, the sacred wisdom. And so I found this huge need for education as a non-medical doula. And that's when I created the Doulagivers Institute to fill that gap to help patients and families.
Did you knew about Elizabeth Kübler-Ross' work then when you started?
It's so interesting. I love this story because I can go back and literally pull the email to Ken, like the first email. And so when I was a hospice nurse, I actually knew it wasn't going well. And I became a cancer nurse, an oncology nurse, because they usually want you to do that before you're a hospice nurse. And I really wanted to be a great hospice nurse. And so I went to do oncology, and it was so dysfunctional. And that's when I reached out to Ken. So I had heard about Elizabeth Kübler-Ross. I hadn't read much of her, but I was like, what is happening here? What's going on? I need some guidance. And I found some of her work, and then I reached out and sent an email to him. And that was such a long time ago. It was like maybe 2009. He was just a beautiful person, and I started reading some of her work. And what I love is I think that she's just the original death doula, but such a humanitarian. And she's her heart about showing up for each other and fighting for change, and it was very hard for her. It's not so hard for us right now. We don't have it like she did. She broke down the walls, allowing me to really do the work that I do today. So love her and continue to be guided by her, right? And wanting to always help, wherever we can with their organization and movement.
Maybe that is one of the things that reunited us because of that love. And I 100% agree with you. The first death doula was Elizabeth Kübler-Ross, but you are a great one now. And you know why? Because you're very generous, because you don't only do the work, you share your knowledge for others to do the work. And that's very generous from you.
Maybe before we, sorry to interrupt you, because I wouldn't like to let our audience out of this. Could you explain a little bit to us what is a doula giver and what he or she does? Because I know we know, but for all of our audience to know and get a better understanding from our conversation from now on, I would like you to.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And it's so important to clarify this. So we treat in the United States and many other places death as a medical experience, and we expect the medical system and doctors to fix it. And it's not a medical experience, it's a human one. And so coming up with this training of doula giver, means it's a non-medical person who treats somebody as they're aging and the end of life holistically. So mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and holds this space for them and their loved ones. Exactly. So if you've heard of the word doula, it's usually associated with birthing of babies, that there's these women that show up to do that, mostly women. And then it's the same now. I think the end of life is just as important, but we're not doing that. So creating a profession that people can come and hold space and guide that patient and family through that experience has changed everything. So they're helping the medical professional as well. So they're helping the patient, the family, and the medical team. They're filling in that gap. That's what a doula giver does.
Such inspiring work and such a hard work, especially because of the family, isn't it? Not because of the ill person, but the family. They're very anxious. We're not comfortable talking about death, especially not death in general, the death of my mother, the death of myself. That's another subject.
Yeah, and I want to thank you because I've been so blessed to be in this, and I know there are no accidents. I know that there's a higher path that is unfolding for all of us if we just show up and answer to that. And I know that, having no end of life experience before I followed my guidance to go to hospice, becoming a hospice nurse, becoming an oncology nurse, and then being able to speak from those experiences within the system, and then being able to go to Zimbabwe and to Thailand to train, and then the beautiful Guatemala trip that we were on, and being able to take all of that experience that unites us in our humanity and being able to teach from that vantage point, not only teaches about end of life, but teaches about life. And when we say that end of life is hard right now because of the families, I want to tell you what I think is so important. When we bring back the teachings and the sacredness of end of life, the truth about it now, not only does it help us when we get there, because somewhere we know, okay, that's going to be part of the journey, but it changes the lens in which I live every single day.
Is there something that you would say is like common or we all share in different countries and regions? I know you like to travel a lot, and that's something we share as well. And we all treat death differently. But is there something that could apply to all of us on those hard times for us?
One of the most important things, if we can just kind of take a breath for a minute and settle into this moment, because it's really a beautiful conversation we're having. And remembering that each and every one of us will be called to show up for someone at the end of life. We will all go through it. Our parents, our grandparents, ourselves, our children. We simply forgot in our awareness today that end of life is a natural part of the journey and can go really well with the guidance and support and education. And so knowing that no matter who you are, where you are, how much money you have, what you look like, how many degrees you have, that bears nothing at the end. At the end of life, the body found the same way. And I think that was pivotal for me to see people in Zimbabwe when I was volunteering, without the medicines and without what we have, what we're lucky to have in many countries or United States, but they had presence, and they were teaching people the natural way that the body was shutting down. And I thought that is such an important moment, that no matter if you're a mansion in Millbrook or a dirt floor in a hut in Zimbabwe, we shut down so much more similar than different. And when I can tell somebody just what is happening, them interventions for comfort, turning and positioning, or just letting them know that what they're seeing is a natural part of the end of life process, not to be afraid, changed everything for that family. So I think the first thing we have to remind ourselves is that, okay, this is a natural part of the journey, and it doesn't have to be scary, and it doesn't have to be feared.
I agree totally. Because maybe you think that in Mexico, we have the Day of the Dead and we celebrate death and that we're okay with the subject, but we're not. We're not. We just do that as traditions, part of our culture, but we're not fine with the subject. When the moment comes, everyone is anxious. They want to turn the patient into the hospital so he or she dies there. And I think that's the worst thing, isn't it?
So, Gabby, can I ask you a question? Why do you think that happens? Is it because we're not aware of the skill of end of life, that we haven't taught families? Because I find that they panic when they're in the home with someone they love and they don't know anything about what to expect. That's what scares them usually. That's what makes them want to call the hospital, and also makes this a very chaotic situation. I found that skill of caring for the dying that was handed down 100 years ago from grandmother to grandchild globally has been lost.
Exactly.
That's what Doulagivers Institute offers for free in our training. That's where we started. And now we have it in Spanish, and we give that for free. And it's really important to get back into families now before they need it.
It's basically because of that. We don't know what to do. We don't want to do anything that harms our family.
Of course.
And we're nervous. We're nervous and we're scared. We're scared of the death. That's the truth.
Okay, but how do you blame someone for being scared when their loved one is at the end of life in their home, and they're responsible to care for them, and they don't know the first thing about how to do that? That's what's happening in the United States as well. And I think it's an absolute unfair setup, because how can it possibly go well? They don't even know when to call the hospice nurse, what to do. It's a tragic. So that's how Doulagivers started. So when I was a hospice nurse, and the hospice nurse is supposed to teach the family how to. Now, in the United States, I was there for 1 hour once a week. So because of the reimbursement, you can't teach families how to do this. They come on the services very late. So I developed a training. It's the Doulagivers Level 1 training. I went to my CEO of the hospice. I said, end of life is not going well for most families. He said, that's all we can do. I said, more. He said, we can't. I said, I have an idea. I have this training. Look at it. He looked at it. He said, this is great. He goes, we can't use it. I go, why? He goes, we won't get reimbursed, won't get paid for it in insurance. So what did I do? I said, okay. I'm just going to go to the library and give it for free. And what do you think happened?
What happened?
It filled up. And then I did it again and it filled up. And then I said, let me put it live online. This is 16 to 18 years ago. And we do it every month and have thousands of people that come to this training from all over the world to learn how to care for their loved one. And it's changing lives. It's changing. That's what we need to bring back. And that's what I want to offer everywhere.
I think it's changing lives and it's changing death because it changed the way we say goodbye.
Yeah.
It's very important to say goodbye and to say it with an open heart and knowing what to do in those moments. It's not about saving the life. It's about saying goodbye to that person. We don't know how to say goodbye.
I love that you shared that. And it's so important because I always will try and be very clear on my intention when I go to do something. And so how this started was to get the skills back in the hands of family members to be empowered to care for their loved one. Remember, we only have one opportunity to do that. We can't go back and do it again. And just what you said, and I just want to highlight it. I want to empower families, give them what they need to meet this part of the journey with love and presence, not fear, because those are the choices. And so if we can invite you in and we can give you the clear understanding of what end of life looks like, but also in those 3 stages, the interventions. However, when I share stories, because I've been with over 1,000 people at the end of life, when I share stories of what patients say and what they want you to know, it starts to change this entire focus of something that is the number one fear into possibly one of our greatest teachers about life and living. And that is a beautiful thing.
I think that death is the one that opens the eyes for the living. So we have to do that. You were going to ask something?
Yes.
Maybe with all your knowledge, and of course people panic at those times, but what would you say is the biggest mistake people do when they're facing the death of a loved one?
Yeah, is not realizing that we're all going to be faced there ahead of time. So again, it's very hard for them to try and learn something when they're in shock in the present moment. So for me, and I'll use myself as an example, I have 2 parents that I love very much who are both 80, 86. I know, see, this is important, that one day I'm going to be called to show up for them, right? Not only at the end of life, but as they age. Getting information now, today, and planning with my loved ones, Mom, what's important to you because I want to support you. So where do you want to be home? And how, the very important questions that we want to ask our loved ones so we can let their journey be their journey. And one of the greatest things I can do is have a roadmap on how to help my mother, to support her in that. And it helps everyone in the family. So I think one of the greatest things to quantify what you asked, which is beautiful, is pretending that death is not going to happen. That's our greatest mistake. Because when it does show up, and by the way, I don't know any different yet. Tell me if it's different, but none of us has been able to escape that.
No.
You can push it away sometimes. And that place of pushing it away from fear can sometimes be a dangerous place of people doing more operations and being in places they don't want to be. So it's really important that I pick my quality of life, but pretending that it's not going to happen, because when it does guaranteed show up and we're not prepared for it, that end of life is 10,000 times more complicated, not just for the person, but for the family members as well.
You have to have that conversation. Maybe it's uncomfortable, but you have to have that conversation with your parents, with your sons, with all the family.
You have to because you want to give them what is one of the greatest gifts, is how to help you, support you in that space when they're going to be, very emotional. So here's what I want. So yes, Mom wants to be home with the dogs, and this is what she wants. That gives them a pathway. But also we're providing, and I really want to emphasize this, Doulagivers Institute started and is today providing free training for families to learn how to care for their loved one in its completion. This works everywhere, for free. And now it's in 15 languages. And by the way, we just launched our Spanish division. We just announced it, that we're doing not only the level 1 in Spanish, but we will have certification. We will have all this free resources because there's so many incredible communities and countries, and we are here to support our global family. So it's exciting to be able to share that with you today.
Thank you. And all the info will be down here in the description of the video.
Beautiful.
Please check it out. And maybe you can talk about a little bit more to us about what you have experienced in your life, all of these patients you have lived with, what would you say is maybe the most significant thing people, I don't know if regret or would like to do or would like to say at the end of life, at that moment? What is something that in common you see that most people want to do or say or have?
So here's the thing, and I love this part of the conversation because and Gabby, you alluded to this. We're talking about death, but we're talking about life. So you can call me a death doula. I'm a life doula because they're not, and I want us to get there. And so there's a very common thing at the end of life that people will share, and this changed my life immediately. People at the end of life always will say that they thought they had more time, but the biggest regret is that they know that they didn't fully live, that they lived scared, they lived small. They were like, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll get to it because I'm afraid of this and I'm fearful and I'm listening to the ego. And then their time is up. And so what I learned is two very important things is that number one, time is our greatest commodity. All of us. Time is your greatest commodity, not money, but time, because one day the journey will be over and I don't know how many days I have. So what I did right away was make sure that I treated each day almost like it's one little lifetime, that I made sure that the things that were important with doing something of service, showing up with non-judgment, making sure I am present in the day and enjoying the beautiful moments of connection with nature and people I meet on the street or whoever it is, making sure I show up in love and not fear. Because there's the two parts of us that we see at the end of life. We see when people's physical bodies are diminishing, they become more of their true self, and it's love. And it's really about following the heart guidance, which is, again, what I follow to listen to go to hospice. And I think it's very important to know that that's there. So they regret that they didn't follow the heart. And they can't get that time back. And so for your listeners, and I know we all have it, follow your passion, follow what you're here to do. And I believe each and every one of us is here for a reason. And I know that we all have gifts to be sharing. Make sure you're sharing yours and living in that space of present moment gratitude so that we don't miss it. Because when the day comes, we want to be able to say, well done. Okay.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that.
Oh,
I love that. And I know it's so true because we have traveled together to Guatemala. That's why I said I do that when she said Guatemala. And I know you, enjoy life like that. The simplest thing, simple thing to eat, simple place to go, a beautiful place to see, an audience. Every moment, you're so humble, you're so easygoing. You're incredible, Suzanne. I really say that from the heart. And the work you do is so important. And so in Mexico, we say congruente. How do I say that in English? That
alignment,
alignment, hard word,
right? Maybe alignment, congruence.
Yeah,
yes, align with
alignment,
the way you think is the way you live, and that's the way you teach. That's what I have learned from you. I want to ask you a question as my teacher. I work with my patients with these communication boards, but I find them a little bit confusing sometimes and too many things in the board. Have you made your own communication boards or do you use these ones?
So I don't use that one. May I ask you, you're talking about people who are nonverbal?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I have not. It's very interesting, Gabby. And I think that that's a beautiful thing that we could do. I would do it on a much smaller scale. However, I teach, and I really, really want to emphasize, not just for doula givers, but for everyone, is your intuition and your sense of what you're getting. And so nonverbal communication is so important for us to understand because it's not what people say. We know that, right? It's really what they do. It's really the energy in which they are showing up. So being able to tap into what do I know that person may need and what do I feel? And then for nonverbal, I think it's important to have, I would probably scale that down. I thank you for that idea, to be a little bit more digestible, I think. But also, yeah, so for people that are nonverbal, May I share a story because this just really comes up with what you just shared? And then
Yes,
I do
please
want to
do.
touch on grief because I think that's super important for the work that you do. And I want to share what the aha moment from my work has connected with grief. But I had a woman with ALS and I was a very young hospice nurse. So remember, I had no end of life experience. They gave me a bunch of patients, sent me out on my way. Was I scared? Absolutely. But did I know I needed to be there? Of course. And I also knew that end of life in that sense wasn't an emergency. So I had to trust and have that courage. But I went to see this woman. She was very young. She was like 40 years old. She had advanced ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease. She was nonverbal. She was paralyzed. And I came into the house and she was propped up on the couch with her head on a pillow because she was all paralyzed. And she had one daughter who was 17 years old who was coming in and out of the house, slamming the door, really, really angry. And I can understand, a young girl. So here's what happened. I'm a young hospice nurse. I'm already nervous. So I'm trying to communicate with this woman with like eye blinking. And at some point her head fell off the pillow. So it was like dangling because she was paralyzed. It was dangling like a doll. And I remember asking her, I said, can I come and straighten up your head? And I was so nervous. And I'm coming over to her. And this woman was smiling at me, the most beautiful, loving smile. She was just beaming with love. She was taking care of me. She knew how nervous I was. And she had such a vibrant, peaceful love around her. And so what I came to realize as a hospice nurse with working with so many people is as the people get closer to the end of life, they connect with their true part of them. They connect to a part of them that's always home, that's always at peace. And here this woman, because I couldn't wrap my head around, this woman is dying. She's, so young, her daughter's slamming. And here she's, when I say the most loving, beautiful smile, how is it possible? I said, how is it possible she could smile like that? And now I understand what that was, is that she was so connected. And there was, when you talk about nonverbal communication, just incredible. So I think that it's really important that we have those skills, but I also think it's really important to our presence and grounding in the moment. Like I'll tell families and doulas, it's not, people will say, what do I do? My loved one's dying. I don't know what to do. And here's my answer to that. It's not so much what you need to do as what you need to be.
Exactly.
You need to be loving. You need to be non-judgmental. And if you are truly present, it'll tell you everything you need to know. Somebody's in pain, something's not going well, because you can take it all in. And then you can start to put some care plans into place.
I think you already answered my question, but it would be that what like special skills would someone need to be a doula giver? You talk about nonverbal communication and being present and in the moment, but is there something else that would be like really important for someone at your line of job to be able to identify or do or have like a human being?
Yes, there's one particular thing that I need you to have. If you have this, then we are good and we can teach everything else. You have to have the calling. Okay. It is the hardest work that I've ever done and the most rewarding work that I've ever done. And also it chooses you. It keeps showing up. You keep having opportunities. And for you, when it shows up your higher path and you say yes to that, by the way, even when it makes no analytical sense, like me going to hospice, when you try that and you say yes to that, your whole life opens up in ways you could have never imagined. That's how life works. It's following your path and your guidance, but you have to have the calling. So it's not something that you say, well, aging population, great job security, no. It's a calling because it's a heart-centered, compassionate role, and it chooses you. And those people who are called forth know that. Now, that's professional doula giver for people who are in the family and knowing that I want to show up for my mother, and my father at the end of life, take the training because that's available for everyone. And it's also such a great tool and it will help you with your life focus as well. Yeah.
What do you do, Suzanne, not to fall into total stress or burnout? What practices do you have to avoid that?
Very important that we do that. Medical staff in the United States they're absolutely burnt out and killing themselves. There's no they treat self-care in general like it's selfish. So For me, when I developed Doula Givers and the professional doula giver, it was very important for me to create that role and design it in the optimum way of everything that I could ever want in the practitioner. Part of that is self-care. And self-care is not when I feel burnt out. When I'm already exhausted, that's yes, you need to stop and do things, but self-care needs to be implemented small daily so that you can stay in balance. So I'll my routine because it's what I do and I held myself to it. Sometimes it varies depending on how busy I am, but I usually always do this is I start with a quiet meditation in the morning.
Okay.
Before I jump out of bed, I make sure that I check in with my heart and always want to put that intention first. And that really does it almost like it creates an energetic bubble that I want to show up, that I am grateful just in that gratitude for the day. And then I make sure that I am out in nature. You know, maybe it's a big, like I just took a walk in Central Park, which is one of my most favorite things in the apps world. And I'm looking at my schedule and I know I have this beautiful podcast and I know I have some meetings later. And if I didn't get it in, it wouldn't happen. And so I went there and it just makes me so grateful. And just, again, it just neutralizes things. Making sure I have water, making sure that I'm eating, and I love a delicious meal, but making sure I'm giving this beautiful that I've been given the nutrients that it needs. I check in with the 4 body systems. I usually ask physically how I'm doing, mentally how I'm doing, and that could be unplugging from the news. A lot of the news, as we know, can be very, very triggering and stressful. Emotionally, how am I doing? Am I, is anything happening there? And then spiritually, where's my connection? Where's my connection? And that's always going to be, and I'll tell you, the things that I do that are of service, purely of service, to help us connect are the most things I'm most grateful for and the most beautiful things that I've ever done. Being able to support building a Doula Givers resource center in a country that needs that so that they can then take care of each other. The most wonderful thing. So making sure that, I'm connecting in that way. Where can I show up today to be kind and to make sure that I'm connecting? And that really keeps me in what I call the joy of being, the flow, the alignment of the being part, not the ego part, the being part.
Exactly.
And you talked about alignment. And I think that's really important to understand where's your connection with alignment and what does that mean? And you need to do that work. You need to unplug from the TV. You need to say, what do I need? And that's the benefits of it. And the joy, not only health that comes through of that, but also creativity. When I go on walks, I get ideas for things of the work, and it's just it's beautiful.
Yes, I know. And one more thing about this. What about pets? Do they help you feel centered, feel complete? And what do you think it's the family? Mostly in Mexico, they take out the pets from the room when someone is dying. And I say, don't do that. Let him have his dog, his cat. Let them be with them. What do you think about this?
So this is important again. And I love that you're talking about this because the conversation needs to happen now. We need to talk about the beauty now so that we're not in that place. Pets absolutely are part of this experience. Now, let's just use an example. Pets are so unconditionally loving and well, we know myself and people who have pets, we love them so much and they bring us so much comfort. Why would we want them removed? Also, this pet is saying goodbye to their loved one. They know. So always let the animal be there if appropriate. And so we want to talk about that ahead of time. What does that look like? Can that be possible? And so we talk about that sacred space at the very end and making sure that the pet, like it's usually, scaled down. The pet should always be able because they're so aware and they're seeing their loved one decline. It's very important for them. And then also making sure we have a good, if you have to rehome a pet or what's going to happen to that pet, making sure the loved one who's leaving this planet knows what's going to happen to their pet, because it's one of the things they worry about a lot as well. So absolutely let the animals be there. Yes.
I think I already got like a grasp of what you understand about life and how you live your life. I would like to get to know a little bit more about your understanding of death and what do you think happens when we die. So if you could talk about that for a moment.
I can. So It's so fascinating and beautiful because when you talk to people who work in this space and you ask them, are you afraid of death? Most would say, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because of what we've been honored and privileged to see. So there's no doubt in my mind that things go on and on and on, and that there's a much bigger, beautiful picture than most of us are aware in this human experience. So for me, working with people at the end of life, hearing what they share, what they're experiencing, what they're seeing, the excitement at times, it was like, what is going on here? Talking about seeing loved ones who've died already that they say come to help cross them over. Not only remove the fear, but then said, okay, there's a much bigger picture. What is the meaning of life? And I feel like the meaning of for all of us is to leave the world a better place because we're in it, to be of service, to share our gifts, to raise the vibration of love for myself and our global community. And so if you look at that, then I want to break down that I went to do some studying with the science of physics when I started to see these things. And it's actually quite validated by the study of physics. Albert Einstein, people talk about this. Nikola Tesla talks about everything is energy. And so when you talk about consciousness, talk about the spirit, talk about the soul, everything is energy. So it made sense when I was bedside with somebody at the end of life, when they physically were diminishing and their bodies were dying, that it almost seemed like their spirit soul was getting stronger. And so then when science starts talking about that everything is energy, that loving energy of a spirit, and the definition of energy is that it can't be destroyed. This is fifth grade science. It can either be a solid, liquid, or a gas. And people will talk about going back home, being connected. It makes sense that it's almost that we're here having, it's like the school of life, that we're here learning and having an experience. And then we go back to our purest form of love that we're all connected to. So for me, the emphasis is, what do we do with the gift now? How am I supposed to show up every day so that when this is over, again, I can say, okay, I contributed and off to the next.
Mm-hmm. I lived. No,
I lived.
I lived. I lived. I think that death is the graduation of life.
Absolutely.
And we always be happy at graduations. We are always happy in those moments. It's the only goodbye that it's very found in our heart, because we say, okay, he's graduating from school. He learned.
That's right.
He learned.
That's right.
When we leave this life, this earth, it's a good thing to know she learned.
Of course. And not only did she learn, but her learning, we learned from, right? So when we're part of that, and I know Elizabeth Kübler-Ross talks about the graduating. And so maybe I invite the idea of, could death be looked at as a second birthday? Because, and a celebration that she graduated. And again, you're always going to be hurting when you're saying goodbye to that physical person. But we know that it's a part of the journey. Can that over time change to a celebration of their life, of the gifts that they contributed, of that we got to have those adventures with them? And I think it's really important. And if we can go into grief for a minute, because I want to share what surprised me with the work that I do. So for me, the thing, and we've done about 360,000 people globally with the level 1 training all over the world, from teaching them how to care for their loved ones. What I didn't expect was how many people responded that took that training, of how it healed their grief. And I'm talking about grief of 40 years, 30 years, people who've had their children leave early. That training, somehow, them learning the sacred and the truth about end of life, something happened for them. And what a gift that is. So we are suffering from such traumatic grief today, because we are not talking about end of life at all. So it shows up and it's a very frenetic thing, and people are stuck in the regrets and grief, I understand. But could a part of healthy grieving be, again, bringing back this knowledge and conversation about end of life and how life works, could that alleviate when we get there? I'm going to tell you, I think it absolutely can. I think we need to. So for me, there's a 3-part win: empowering with the skills of how to care for my loved one at the end of life, learning about life, knowing that today I'm going to appreciate this day and all that it is, because I don't know how many I have. And then also helping to heal grief or have a healthier grief. That's a win across the board for me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Do you have another question before
Yes.
I start talking about your new book?
Okay.
I want to talk about the good death.
I would like to know. I know most of us don't have the chance to choose how we would like our last moments to be. But if you could choose, what would that perfect scenario for you would be?
For her dying?
Yes, for
Yeah.
when you pass away.
Let's go there. I mean, look, I can't be talking about this and not be able to like put myself there. I think it's really important. So we don't
Thank
know
you.
exactly what that will. Here's what I do want to say. Picking what quality of life is to me. And then when it can no longer be reversed, I want to be in my home surroundings. I want to be with pets. I want to be with those that I love. I would like to, if possible, have an opportunity to be outside, if that's possible, or by a window, have wonderful music playing, go over stories of my life with my loved ones, warm blankets, fun food, making sure, again, that my symptoms are managed. But I want my family to be present and know how much I love them. And I want to share in the journey together. It's really important. And I try and do this all the time, by the way, is reflecting on the beautiful moments that we've had together, not the big Christmases and things, but just the magical moments that I'm so grateful for the love of letting me be your mom, of having this time together in New York City. And I want to make sure that we're talking about all of that, because what a gift that we've been able to have this journey together. That's what I would like there. Yeah.
Wow. As
Thank you.
Mother Teresa said, it's the extraordinary in the ordinary day, in an ordinary day.
And let's hold on to that for a minute, because that's attainable for everyone. And it's a question of awareness. And that's really important. So if I'm sitting here worrying about, because we can do that, right? Worrying about everything I have to do, or regretful of the past and all the things that have happened, I am missing this moment. And it's the moment of this is where the magic is. And I'll tell you, if you get really present and that sun is coming and you hear the birds singing and you look at your family and you say, how blessed are we? There's just like an alignment of bliss that's happening. And that really, again, is your perspective. And everyone has the ability to have experience, but we have to get present in the moment of gratitude of what we have.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for
Yes.
sharing.
I know one thing for sure. I want you by my bedside
Yes.
when I die.
Me too.
Okay. Yes, I will absolutely be honored. Yes.
And yeah, talking seriously, and count with me as a friend when the time comes from your parents. I will be there for you too, because who cares for the caregiver? I will care for you. I promise that.
Thank you. And that's what I try and tell people too. When you're in this space doing this work, when your family is in that, remember, you're the daughter. You and you need to be don't be all, you have the knowledge, but don't forget that you're still the family member and that you need support and to be that too. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. Thank you for everything. Tell us about your book.
Oh.
Is there such thing as a good death?
Yes, there is such thing as a good death. One of the things I say is that this is not about our agenda. We are here to show up for them. And that's really important because we want to respect individual choices. But a good death, and again, the reason, and so I have,
Look at the book. I love the cover. I love the cover too.
Thank you. Well, trees are very important, butterflies. And so I just had this vision of this kind of image, and they did such a beautiful job, the illustrator, on that, to that next section, right? To flying away. So the book was such a fascinating thing. I was approached years ago by somebody who was in publishing and said, I know what you're doing with Doulagivers and you need to write a book. And I said, I can't write a book. I have no time because we're so busy. And she said, you need to write this book. And so she came back to me. And so this is, again, what I always will do. And I think this is a great technique to teach your listeners is that I get still and quiet and go into the heart and ask the question, am I to write the book? Do I need to write the book? And what I got from that was that if you could put your training and knowledge into a book, you can reach so many more people. And that's what the intention for Doulagivers and my intention. So of course it was a yes. So I went right back to her, changed my schedule around a bit, wrote this book. It's got all of the training in it. It's just really a wonderful, it's like the what do you expect when you're expecting a baby, the opposite end of life.
When I was expecting him.
Yep, absolutely, right? It's got a planner. It's got the peace of mind planner in it. And so the book has been so well received, which is a real beautiful honor. But we've been able to translate it now into multiple different languages. And so the Spanish publishers, which are amazing, in a few months, so they are from Spain, but in a few months, this book will be available in Mexico, in Panama, in all different places. And we want to have it available with, again, that free training in Spanish to all the different places. And
Thank you for that.
And I hope to come to visit to many of them, if not all of them. Yeah.
Yes. We'll be waiting. We would love to be your guides here in Mexico.
Yes.
To learn so many things about Mexican culture.
I would
about
love
death.
it.
We even have here pan de muerto.
Bread of the dead.
Bread of the dead.
Love
we
it.
have so many things. Lottery. La muerte and things like that. You're gonna love Mexico, so
I love
we're
Mexico.
waiting for you.
So thank you. And I'm saying yes to that. So we're committing here because I have loved Mexico, the energy of Mexico, even before I was a nurse. It's such a beautiful, magical place with such lovely people. And so it would be an absolute honor to come do a free training and to learn so much more about this beautiful country.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything. Thank you for who you are. Who you are makes a difference in this world. I can say that for sure. And thank you for being here in our podcast, Después de la pérdida. You also have a podcast. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's Ask a Death Doula, and it's wonderful. And I want to make myself available just so people can step into this space and ask me questions and get any knowledge that they need. And again, ask a Death Doula about life. You know, there's going to be a whole different thing. So what have we learned? And it's so interesting with all of the publicity from the book, things that are starting to get really the attention are the wisdom of those at the end of life, what I've learned about life, and you just said it, Gabby, and I really want people to hear what you just shared, is that you followed your heart. I followed my heart. And that's what changes your whole life experience. And everyone, if you had the courage to follow what your heart's guiding, you will have the most beautiful, magnificent life in alignment, in fulfillment, in service, because that's how it works. And that's all we have to do is just trust in this. Don't try and control it. And Ask a Death Doula is a way that we can talk lots about all of that, not only death, but life as well.
And I would add one more thing. Follow your heart and put knowledge into it, because you may have good intentions, and even with good intentions, you can harm. So you have to know how to do it. And that's what Doulagivers do for us. They give us the knowledge, the know-how. You have the good intentions, you have the good heart, but you have to put knowledge in it too.
I love that.
Makes a professional work.
Oh, absolutely. And so here's what I'll always say. You get the inspired guidance, that's the heart, but then you have to take inspired action, and that's the work, right? So do it and commit to it because you deserve it. And also our patients and families deserve the highest level of care possible.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this podcast. Hearing you, I think that more than teaching about how to die, you teach us about how to live. And that's beautiful, because that's applies to all of us, regardless of whether you live in the United States or Mexico. We have a lot of audience as well in South America or Spain. And thank you for that. Thank you for continue to share all of your knowledge. All of the links of everything she said would be down here in the description.
And her social media
yes,
too.
Could you please tell where you could be followed, and on Instagram or the website, everything, please?
Yeah, so we'll tell you. So it's doulagivers.com. And then, of course, we have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, TikTok, YouTube. We'll give you all that information, and whatever feels right for you. We are a loving global community, and we invite everyone to this space. And this is our time. I think that each and every one of us has the question that we need to answer is, how am I showing up? Am I going to show up in love, or am I going to show up in fear? And let's show up in love, and let's show up together. And this is the work that does that. So thank you for having me.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's show up from love. Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. I love you.
I love you too. I love you too. I can't wait to see you both.
Yes.
Thank you so
much. Hope
much.
to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Si te gustó este episodio, por favor, compártelo.
Vamos a hacer una gran red de apoyo.
Nos escuchamos la siguiente semana en un episodio más
de Después de la pérdida.
Paz y bien.